Thanks for the reminder. Seems like we don't have any new faces, so we'll jump into release planning and updates. Start with platform team.
Yep, I'm trying to see if Dan was here. Yeah, he is, but I'll speak to it. We are thinking about releasing a patch for Pack that has to do with the issue that Emily and Jesse brought up in regards to duplicate layers on Buildpacks. So we're hoping to work through some of that. I think Dan's going to be taking that on.
Yeah, I think we're shooting to get that out next week. So.
On the implementation side, we shipped the life cycle last week, and then we shipped a patch 2 days later. Just kicking off the planning for the next release 0.12.0, which will have stack packs.
Awesome. Any other release planning updates? We will jump into our RFC review. One second to share my screen. So a bunch of these are opened by Sam, who I think is here today. I actually took those and put them separately on the agenda because Emily and I had a chance to kind of sync up on, I think some things we never got to resolving during different working group meetings about how we could more strategically push some of those forward. They're really good ideas, and I want to make sure that we kind of leave space to talk about them. And so I actually took those and put them separately on the agenda in a thing, and we can touch on them here, but just note that they'll be over there. Sam, is that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. Definitely don't want to leave you hanging. I know some of those are, I think one's from about a month ago. All right, so let's start at the top. Additions to RFC template. Where are we with this?
Just open that one. I think it's just looking for eyes and comments.
So I'm a little confused. It looks like you modified the template, but did you mean to include your?
I might have made a mistake.
Cool. Is this supposed to be an RFC for changes to the template or just changes to the template?
It's an RFC for changes to the template.
Got it.
Yeah, I think you just edited the wrong file name.
Okay, I'll go fix it.
Cool. Does this need anything this week? Do we need to assign somebody to it since it's an RFC? It's supposed
Yeah,
to,
it's
someone's
probably
supposed
core
to
team.
Label core team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Next thing is define a minimum standard for docs in order to ship the life cycle. Where are we with this one?
Also just open. This one I kind of felt was most relevant to the implementation team. Yeah, just looking for comments. I might have made the same mistake.
Yeah, we should copy the template to anyone. Cool. Sounds good. Is this does this need a label? It has labels on it already. Just looking for feedback. Cool. And sorry, to refresh. Next thing is add RFC for interaction mode. That's draft. Add bomb to layer content metadata. I put this one on the agenda today to chat about. I don't think we're just looking for anything else besides more feedback. So skip over it. Proposed creation of best practices and guidelines. I didn't actually put this one on there because it's more about documentation. Where are we at with this?
So I believe this is at the scope with the sub-team as well, the learning sub-team. And we're just gathering feedback right now.
Sounds good. Pack cache is a draft. Allow setting default command arguments that can be overridden by the user. This is not one I put on the agenda. Emily and I had a chance to talk about this and want to propose maybe an easy path or path forward that wouldn't change this RFC too much, but may introduce some other breaking changes. But we can save that for the agenda. Build runtime user IDs. Seems like this could almost go to FCP, but we should also put it on the agenda for today too. I think, Emily, if I remember, we just said this was good, but we had one piece of feedback around what has or
yeah, I think in the
how it's
beginning you had
feedback.
some concerns around this, but we talked them through, and I think basically it makes sense to take it as written, but add a couple shoulds in the spec.
We can talk about that when we get to it. Disambiguate layer metadata files from app metadata. Also put this one on the agenda. This is about the directories still. Probably needs more discussion before it can move forward. Guidelines for accepting component level contributions is mine, and I still need to provide feedback there. Issue generation is Javier's. Where's this going?
Still waiting on reviews, I believe.
Seems like we have 3 out of 5. So it could move to FCP.
That'd be great.
Cool. FCP as of what's today?
We typically do it
47?
the other direction when it's supposed to be done, which would be the 14th.
FCP closing, right? Or 14. Cool. And then it's got labels. Does it need anything else?
Throw the FCP label on there.
Yeah.
It's spelled out final comment.
comment
Yeah.
Cool. Project descriptor demands RFC is in FCP. Anything this need? Who's the shepherd for it? Javier has
Yeah, I
issues
think-
created.
Yeah, I don't know if we're waiting for the issues created from the other sub teams as well.
Cool. It's got platform and learning. Are there other subteams this involves? Implementation.
I think at one point we said every subteam should add a label just to acknowledge the no op.
So
Can't wait for that auto issue generation.
I know.
should I tag somebody here to say?
I think you could do. You could do a team call out, right? So Buildpacks / implementations maintainers and then distribution maintainers.
Oh yeah.
We'll sign off for core team, right?
Cool. And last one. Oh no, there's one more here. Package refactoring. This looks like it's an FCP, has issues created, still need to hear from implementation and distribution. Is that right?
I think this could close because it's a sub team only change. But again, that process isn't well defined just yet. So open to suggestions.
Seems like you should just go merge it.
I don't have access to it. Someone should. Yes.
Okay, someone can merge this after the meeting.
I'll take a look at that. Where are the issues listed that were opened for it?
They should be in the timeline.
Sounds like we should also relax permissions to allow maintainers to write to
maintainers.
this repo.
Agree. All right, that's our RFC review, and I'm gonna stop sharing. Back on the dock, we have next thing on the list is intro video.
Yeah, I put this. So yesterday we had a meeting about the intro video. I put a link to the GitHub discussion about this. We had some brainstorming about what to have in this video, and we split it to two sections, like what and why. And the thing is that we realized that we're not sure how to put in one sentence, like a clear and short sentence, what is cloud native Buildpacks? It's pretty weird, but it's hard to explain it in one sentence. I mean, no one of the participants were able to do this. And we were wondering if it's like a good idea to tweet it and to ask for help from the community. I guess that we'll get good ideas from this like tweet, but Joe suggested that we'll bring this up in this working group. So here we are.
Yeah, one of my concerns with soliciting broadly for it is that, well, there's two. One is we might not actually get the right answers. Like, I'm not sure I want to shape that sentence based on people kind of guessing at what it is. And then the other part of it is like, it feels like something that we should, I don't know if top down is the right phrase, but it feels like that's something that should come from us rather than we collect, from the community. So that said, one of the things I suggested was that we seed the conversation. So I actually just had a chance to look at this thing with the sticky boards that you sent me. And
board, it's called.
yeah, those are I think that kind of idea, like seeding it with those sort of sentence fragments might be an option. I think to me it's they turn source code into OCI images. That definitely doesn't capture everything, but it may not be possible. And certainly, like, in shaping any kind of like concise message, it has to be imperfect, I think. So it might be just a trade-off.
I think if I described what the project is, I would say things that are more like, at scale or, operator developer balance. Whereas if somebody else who's, just focusing on the developer experience, describe what the project is, they might focus on different things. And so it may be a little hard for us to come up with like, something that's more specific than just, it's some stuff that builds OCI images, right? To some extent.
Yeah, in the past, we've used the higher level abstraction phrase. At times, it seemed like that worked really well. At times, it seemed like it didn't. But I think overall, I was happy with it.
Yeah, I think yesterday through the workshop, right? And I think a lot of this requires the context of the workshop to really try to understand what we were trying to aim for. But it's ultimately trying to create this, like, the way it's phrased, it's like this 1 minute intro into Buildpacks, right? And what's the best that we can do in order to kind of pitch Buildpacks and make it something that's very comprehensible so that people don't get turned off from just looking at I think it was a lot of it was based on the feedback that we got from that tweet that was shared in the learning team channel. So it's kind of trying to answer that, right? Or simplify that. I don't know if that helps, but we're definitely trying to keep it short and sweet to that extent.
Do you think it's more important to capture the what or the why? Like, I think what Stephen was alluding to was that's why I would use it, is because it's scalable, or even from a developer experience, because it means I don't have to do these things. Like, I don't have to know how to like construct a Docker image. versus the how, which is like what I originally stated. It turns source code into container images, or not the how, but the what.
Right.
Personally, I think being concise is the most important thing and being comprehensible. And we should avoid getting tempted to put too much of a pitch in it. Like when people
Mm.
want to know what is this, we should tell them what it is, and then they
Right,
can read
so-
more.
But then
Or
do
wax
we
and
tell
a
them
dessert
it's like,
topping.
do we tell them that it's like a project, like an ecosystem? Do we tell them it's a spec, or do we tell them it's like an execution of binaries, right? Like the component of a build pack. And I think
We don't need
that's
to be
where
so
it
specific.
creates some
It's like-
confusing.
Cloud native build packs transforms your source code into an image.
But I think that's what makes it confusing and abstract. And I think that was the feedback we got recently.
I say it's a specification and tooling.
But then specification and tooling for what? I mean, you want
For building OCI images from source code. But as soon as you get into the why, though, like everything, Joe said about abstraction and don't have to understand how to write a Docker file. I say none of that in how I talk about it. I think that why is a paragraph, not a if we have that why, right? It's a lot of different points that mean different things to different users. Sorry.
Yeah, this is the thing is that, I mean, there were many why items, but there were just a few what items. And we think that in order to talk about the why, you first need to explain what it is. So
Yeah, so I didn't mean to like drag us back into a discussion you probably already had the other day in the workshop. I think the question that you're bringing up is, do we want to like do an iteration where we bring everybody in, or do we want to solicit to the community? And so I think what I'm saying is like, let's do one iteration with the broader team. Again, I think Emily mentioned it, and I said kind of a similar thing of turning source code into OCI images. If we think like, can we test that and decide if that's something that works or not? And if it isn't, then we decide if we're gonna, put out a tweet or do a GitHub discussion or whatever.
So I am curious to like what the next steps should be, right? Because I think the workshop, like at least one iteration of the workshop occurred, right? And it was public and the attendance was decent, but obviously not a working group at a working group scale, right? So do you have any proposals on the format, right? Like how do we solicit all this information? Is it one-on-one with all the individuals that we're trying to get their input on? Is it setting up a workshop that happens during the working group meeting, or is there another option?
I'm just saying we put down some concrete ideas. Like I think Terrence just had one. I'd probably do a slightly different version of that. And if we can get consensus on those, and I think there's some valid concerns. Like some people have said, like that tweet, that what's on the page isn't clear enough. Interestingly, though, I have actually seen a couple people tweet at us that they love our docs. I don't know if I shared those. I don't share good stuff. I only share bad stuff.
I know you only give us the bad stuff, so we're like concerned, and we're trying to fix it.
Yeah,
so.
there was just a thread like the day after I shared that that people love our docs. So we may want to take that with a grain of salt. But yeah. So yeah, that's my response is like, let's take one pass where we put some maybe 2 or 3 concrete ideas down and see if we can get consensus around those before reaching out.
Cool. So I would maybe propose that, I don't know, Yael, we could share the discussion board that has this and really kind of focus in on that and try to throw ideas onto that discussion.
sure, I can add it. I mean, it's currently on the learning Slack channel. Is there any other place I should put it on?
I say we just throw it on general, right? And with a
Okay.
very specific ask, like, give us a sentence that describes Buildpacks.
Perfect, I'll do this. Thank you.
All right, we have a number of things on the agenda today, so I'm gonna kind of move us along to Pack Interact.
Yeah, this was mine. Y'all mind if I share my screen?
Go for it.
sorry. So I do know this was in draft mode, but I still wanted to solicit feedback on it. The idea behind this RFC is just that basically, like we were just saying, PAC services a bunch of different audiences, right? There's the operator, maybe someone who wants to build their own paths, or and the casual application developer. And in particular, I'm more interested in the casual application developer. I don't think that they very easily see the value proposition of Buildpacks as they are today. And I think there should be some investment from somebody somewhere into that, right? Like, how do we make it more apparent with PAC, the main entry point, into Buildpacks for the casual application developer, right? Like what it does for you. And, I put some thoughts in here just to, get the conversation going along. I think some cool features like showing things that get updated, breaking between detection and compilation. Some of these things would sort of drive it forward, but a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I did definitely want like a user workflow to be depicted, and then we could sort of work from there. I got my terminal open. Why don't we give this a shot? Let's say I have my pack here and I want to build something. Maybe we'll do like an interact on it. We'll have the detect phase run in my application directory. And then, as an application developer, maybe I can see I have all my build pack. These are implementation build packs right here, right? Like these are my steps that are going to be traversed to build my OCI compliant image. And it's important that I get a nice little blurb about what they do, right? Just to provide some insight. We have some that the defect phase already did, and then we have this custom one. Let's say I want to do some random thing. It's important, I think, that Buildpacks does 90% of the work for you. That's what it feels like. Hey, I'm doing 90% of the work, and then I get a chance to add my little tidbit. And you can get some updates. Maybe that's something we want to show. Let's say I hit B for build. I'm gonna build now. I'm gonna build. The build phase runs, which it normally does just the rest of the phases. But I'm going to traverse all my build packs now, and hopefully my thing will succeed. Oh no, it failed. Oh, what happened? Well, I can tell. It probably had to do with my custom build pack. This random thing. Maybe maybe I know what to do from here now, right? Maybe I know I need to work on this. Maybe I can jump into a debugging session, whatever. Last thing I did want to say is CVE support. I do kind of feel strongly about this, right? Because because I really think that build packs right now is a cool thing that you can use, but having CVE detection makes it a necessary tool for some organizations, right? Because like if you can get that at build time and get that feedback loop really tight for some enterprise organizations, right? It becomes the value proposition is just so clear, right? So I guess that's all I had in the statement. I was hoping for thoughts.
I like
Awesome.
everything about this.
I love it.
I think
feel like-
the CVE thing, I actually think is more of a developer experience thing than the it's for enterprises. Sure, but enterprises are going to scan the image anyways and whatever. So I think it has value more broadly than just that.
So the images we produce now are not very scannable because when Buildpacks install these runtimes, they don't install them in ways that scanners can pick up. But one thing we've been talking about is just came up today is standardizing on SPDX for the bill of materials format. And once, at some point, vulnerability scanners will need to, if they can't already, parse SPDX format and say what vulnerabilities are there, right? That could be a really lightweight way of doing exactly what you see on the thing, right? Because we could SPDX the build packs, we could SPDX the images that get generated. You could know about CVEs that you're going to install before you do the build if you wanted to, right? Because that information could be on the build packs as well, right? So I think this is this very much drives out, or this being able to show the CVEs in this really accessible way really drives out that track of work too, I think.
Once we had this framework in place too, even if we're just bubbling up the simple data we already have with the hooks we already have. It becomes like it's a great place to generate ideas for like where we should be adding more data and how we could show it, right? Like, you know, if you could use this to then run an export and we were showing certain types of layer metadata, or if we were showing like the contents of the build plan, stuff like that, like it could help people come to understand the system better, even if it's not what we want to display in the default view, and let people explore. And it's a great way to drive out features that I feel like we want, but maybe don't want to pollute the standard CLI output with, and therefore haven't put as much intention into them because it's not as clear who the consumer is for them. And it's much easier to build some of these metadata for a concrete consumer than an abstract somebody will consume.
Yeah, the challenge with the regular output, like basically what's in that right pane, is that it's almost like machine readable, or you know, some of it is. And so it's for exactly what you're saying. It's like it's hard to enrich it. It's hard to make it. It's hard to even just make it look good.
Some feedback on the particular demo, Anthony. In that plan section, it'd be amazing if under each of the build packs I could see the layers that got generated by each build pack, and then maybe even like you could, you know, view the bill of materials for that layer by hovering over it and place a logs pane, or you know, hit a button and go into a file explorer where I could actually interact with the, you know, like I think you could turn this into. I'm not saying that, you know, we should do that first. This gets me very excited about how we could drive it out even further to provide that really detailed introspection that's like integrated into the build process itself. That's what I really like that part of it too.
I like they did including a hijack phase too. So if there's something wrong with my proc file build pack, you can dump me into an interactive shell where I have the environment set up just like the build pack would.
Sweet. You know, there are some other latent thoughts. You know, I'm glad you all have some. One was definitely edit, which I didn't talk about, right? Like it'd be nice if we could, I don't know, integrate with Project Toml or something, right? Like just have an easy way to sort of like switch these around, maybe if you want, right? We can say it's not a best practice, right? But you know, as long as the user doesn't feel like encumbered. Okay, if is there anything else, I was thinking at least from my side, next steps would be like to get some cool user testing around this, right? Like I really want to make sure somebody out there is like invested in this, right? Like because they've seen it with their own eyes and they've played with it. There's no other thoughts. I'll move on.
Yeah, everybody's going to disagree with this, but like, yeah, it's great to get people to test it, but there's a certain amount of intuition when you know something is going to work or is good or is useful. And I think you can rely on that to some degree too.
I think if we built this, you know, something that looks like this soon, right? People would like it, is my gut. Like I definitely think, yes, feedback would be great, but like, you know, we're so far behind. We don't have anything that looks like this at all, right? That even if this has some, you know, ugly edge cases and things like that, right? Like, you know, I think it would deliver a lot of value.
I hear you. No, good. Please. I wanted some feedback. I got some good feedback. That's pretty much it for me.
If you want more feedback on like what, you know, how you could expand on the design or ideas you have about, you mentioned editing the individual things or changing the order. I'd really like to just sit down and like walk through all those ideas and kind of, if you're missing context on the API and what's possible, like be really interested in working with you on that. I'm sure other people here would too. Cool. Anything else on this one? All right, let's move on to Sam's RFCs. So I listed them up here in no particular order. I actually wanted to ask Sam, which of these things is highest priority for you to get pushed along? Because I know we've sat on some of them for a while.
I think the one that would help a lot would be the build versus run UID. I guess I mean, I'm already using it in the platforms I'm using, but it'd be nice to have it in the specs so that I can at least rest assured that it won't change in the future. Or otherwise I'll have to figure out some other things. The other one was the BOM in the layer metadata. That would make my life useful. Like that's going to be another useful RFC.
Awesome. And so that BOM in the metadata is 151. Which one was the user IDs? Was that 146? Yeah, 146. So Emily and I had a chance to chat about this. I know we were in some of the past working group meetings, we kind of did a lot of back and forth on different ideas that would, could really change this or not change this. I think what we arrived at is, and I see a lot of approvals on here already, let's just as is essentially, but with a little more way of restricting how it should be used. So like a stack provides a build image and a run image, right? And if the run image, or we should say a stack is allowed to have a different user for the run image than the build image. And then also, and then it should, right? But it doesn't have to, but that should be part of the spec saying, yes, this should be different. So we move away from this, like the current model is it came from what we did at Heroku and Cloud Foundry a long time ago, but it's very unusual to configure like a Linux web server, VM or whatever container that has that installs a bunch of files as a user and then runs them as that same user, where the user could override those files later, right? that's not a very normal way of doing things. Have you seen a Docker file that starts with like user, normal user, and then installs everything? No, usually it installs everything and then switches to that user afterwards. So I'd add to this that we should make it the recommendation for stacks to use a different user. And then also allow stacks or explicitly call out that stacks may use a different group as well, but it's up to the stack to decide if the group is different or the same. Some sets of Buildpacks may want to interact with the stack where they use 755 as a UMask. Some may want to do 750 as a UMask, right? And they should be able to configure that also. But the recommendation should be to at least do one of those two things. Does that seem?
Yeah.
Does anybody else have thoughts on that also?
I feel like you made comments before, Stephen, about compatibility with Buildpacks. So if I'm targeting, say, like a Bionic stack, and then I make like the Buildpacks Bionic stack, and then I make some other company A makes a stack based on top of Bionic that has that stack ID that then does change the user ID. But like I as Buildpack author just targeted Bionic, so in theory my Buildpack should run there. But I have no concept that the users potentially are different or the groups are different. Is that a concern?
I think what I'm asking for is that we say that the Bionic stack is defined to have a different, maybe different runtime user in same group for IO Buildpack stacks Bionic, and we make that change. And I know that's a breaking change, but that would be my recommendation. It wouldn't be a breaking change that you would have to make. Nothing would break if your distribution of the Bionic stack didn't change, right? After this is approved, but the idea would be that we migrate to that model. And I think we should, or like just speaking on the Pacato side, I think that's a change that we should make there too for security. It's bad if you can trick the application process into running arbitrary code and then that code can override the binary of the application process, right? It seems like a security issue that some people like to address.
But that also locks down the entire like working dir, right?
Correct. Yeah. Unless you, like, we could say that the group should stay the same, right? And then you can use that group permission to control it.
Then the spec would say you can have a different group, but for Bionic might keep the same group.
It feels a little too granular to me, but it's like I think I've been convinced that it's a good compromise. And that would solve the consistency issue with Buildpacks.
You always got the tempter if you need to write a file at runtime. In the rare cases you do. I feel like it's not particularly common.
Would it, I guess, like, is that how, I assume that's how your Nginx build pack works today, right to tempter?
We would need someone who works on the Nginx build pack to answer that question.
What aspect? Sorry, do you mean to like interpolate the port or something?
Yeah, just like Nginx hard codes like everything, so you can't pass in mbars to config file, so you have to write. Most Nginx build packs and similar things like that I've seen definitely want some configuration, so you don't have to rerun the build.
Yeah, I think either group permission to write or tempter would probably be how that happens. But I don't know if our Nginx build pack still rewrites Nginx conf at runtime. But regardless, I think that's how we do it in the new model. It seems like this is one of those like pre 1.0 things where like there's probably something we kind of cargo culted that we never addressed, and so I know it could, you know, the transition to by changing the run image user on the kind of default stacks in the different ecosystems could lead to some breakages. I think it's worth doing before 1.0.
I know there's some momentum. We're having a discussion at last office hours around trying to what we could do with stacks to make them less one-off and more sort of like broadly applicable through things. I know, Stephen, that you were saying that we want, and this made sense to me in our current stack model, wanted to allow the group IDs to be different. And I guess that would be a feature of a given stack contract. Do we want to keep that as a potential end goal, but maybe start by requiring them to be the same so that we can make progress without opening a Pandora's box where things don't work and people need to be more aware of what user ID the stack author has set?
Not sure I understand the suggestion. So,
like there'll be some build packs. Let's take Terrence's Nginx conf example that are going to be trying to write a file, maybe. And I feel like as a build pack author, if you want to be able to run on anyone's stack, which is a goal in some ways, you want to know whether that is a pattern you can use or whether you have to move everything to a temp file. So I wonder if leaving the option open creates more room for incompatibilities between stacks, and we should pick one or the other instead of having both. Now I'm thinking about this example, I do feel like cross compatibility might be improved by having a stronger suggestion there.
About the group specifically.
Yeah, about the group.
Okay, yeah. It's still, that configuration is still not like, if I throw up a Linux VM or, you know, container running Apache or whatever, I almost always change the user to nobody or www right at the end. I don't like keep the user as root or whatever user can edit the, you know, web server binary, or sorry, keep the group as whatever user, whatever group can edit the web server binary. So it feels like making that as, like, seems like a good compromise to say the stack can choose if one or both are different, if that makes sense. But I'm a little hesitant to say the stack should make them, the user and group, different and the group match the runtime one, because I think it is pretty unusual. It's still not the configuration I would see if I did this in a Docker file in the most secure way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of like everything being different, and you can use temp files. I'm just worried about cross compatibility. Like if some build pack needs to do this, like are then we either making what isn't the optimal decision we would want for the Bionic stack shared ID, or if we do make the decision we want there, is that going to stop people from moving over it? But we can circle back on that when we talk about changes to the Bionic stack itself. I think we're in agreement about the spec.
Yeah, I'm just curious to get feedback. Does this impact folks like DigitalOcean that are already running the stuff in prod that has stacks? Or I guess Jesse on the Salesforce side as well? Because I think these are the people we would potentially be breaking, right?
I think it actually doesn't break anyone, because the recommendation that the user is different is a should, not a must. And you're allowed to do either thing with the group. So if you have your own stack, nothing changes. It's just pushing things gently in a different direction.
It does break things if you consume the Bionic stack ID, and then we say the Bionic stack ID should change, and then stack maintainers change their run images to match. That's how it could break things for users in the end, right? But it allows, or it does allow those stack authors to control the rollout of their stack changes. It's not a thing we'd break in the life cycle, right? For sure.
Are we versioning stacks then? If there's breaking changes in stacks?
First, we need a stack API, or sorry, a stack spec, right?
Yeah.
I think a stack ID could have API versions associated with it, right? And jumping the API version would trigger a complete rebuild, right? And Buildpacks could even, specify the API version of the stack they're compatible with in the Buildpack toml. But
It's too bad that you missed our discussion on Thursday, because I feel like there's a lot of things that need to change about stacks in order to make them more broadly applicable. Like, I don't want to roll more behavior under the stack ID. I instead want to move the other direction, where the stack ID can be more broadly interpreted and it's less specific to a contract. Like, it could have all the things in it that would go in the platform section of an OCI spec, like am I Linux, what flavor of Linux, what distro, what version of the distro, what architecture, so that we can create a whole stack ID schema where anyone could sort of put in what they wanted and things can just work, instead of then moving more specific domain knowledge about how to use a stack all under the stack ID identifier. I feel like sort of moving the other way.
Doesn't that, I agree with that plan. But doesn't it just, or I don't know if this solves the problem we're running into, because it just moves it to like, okay, now, like the problem we're solving is, or I think we're trying to solve is like, if you have a whole bunch of different build packs, those build packs are either going to expect the user to be different or the same, right? And if we say, okay, a build pack author can now say whether they expect this user to change or not, we've pushed the problem onto the build pack side, and now build packs could be incompatible with each other or whatever. I'm okay with that too, but it seemed like we wanted more uniformity there. It was like, something we'd brought up in past working group meetings about this specifically, so that a build pack doesn't unexpectedly not be able to write to its app directory. It knows if it chose that stack ID, then this is how it needs to behave, right? So I agree with that plan. We got to solve the problem we're running into here about uniformity one way or another, right?
Yeah, and we don't need to solve it in this RFC. I think this RFC is totally fine the way it is.
Yeah. So very tactically, are we okay saying that the spec should allow stacks to say one way or the other, but in this RFC we don't change the Bionic stack, right? Does that so Terrence, it's not a breaking change on anybody with a Bionic stack yet. That would have to come in separately. But this says that they should either be same user, different group, or different user, same group, or different user, different group. But we don't recommend same user, same group as build time.
Which is what the current status is.
The current, yes, right, that's right. Yes, the current status is same as build time. This says that we recommend doing something different, but it doesn't actually change it in the Bionic stack. We need another RFC for the Bionic stack to change the definition of the Bionic stack to be compatible with that. Right now, the project would just not be taking its own recommendation.
What's the use case for same user, different groups?
I think we're talking about, sorry, I think I just flipped it around and I meant to say
Okay.
different user is build, same group is build, or different user and different group
Okay.
at
Yeah,
runtime. Yeah, okay. Cool. So I think this is unblocked. And Sam, if you could just add to the RFC the thing about, that we should make this recommendation in the spec to either do one of the two ways and not the keeping them the same. I think it'd be good to approve and move forward.
Yeah.
Awesome. We got 8 more minutes. What was the other RFC, Sam, you said?
151.
151. Add BOM to layer content metadata. We talked about, Emily and I talked about this one yesterday a little bit too. No, Emily, you want to, I forget exactly.
Let's do it.
Did we say?
I think that was the outcome of the discussion we had about this.
Yeah.
Like I know on Paqueto's side, we already like put a key in the metadata for our BOM entries that has the layer, so we can recreate this, but the work's on the build pack. It'd be nice if it was more natural how to do it in the spec. And I think you made a really good point about the fact that when you're reusing a layer, it's be easy for a build pack to forget to regenerate it. My only open question was for layers that are still in launch toml that we're merging together with this, are we going to assume they are all app layer BOM and that's the reason it didn't go in a layer, or are we just going to leave layer empty?
That's the suggestion I made in the RFC, that you should only put non-layer specific BOMs in the build pack level, like build toml or launch toml. But I left it at a should, not a must. Okay, because I don't think there's a way to enforce it in any way. But yeah.
My other worry, which is not particularly, it's only tangentially related to this discussion, is that we leave the build BOM and report toml, right? But we stopped putting it in a label in order to improve reproducibility. Because like a build dependency changes, but if you're getting the exact same result, shouldn't need to travel with the image. But I wonder if we were wrong about that and people do want to inspect the build BOM. Instead, we should put it in both report toml and a separate label, separate from the existing BOM, but still on the image itself.
Doesn't that affect reproducibility?
It does, but I don't know that anyone cares to that level. Like if someone's version of Gradle changes and they don't get the exact same digest because the config blob is different and nothing else is different, I feel like people are kind of okay with that because something changed in the system.
But if the build pack, brings curl or something, and then the version of curl changes by a patch, and then so the curl that was used to download your JDK into your image is, now the version that was used to download the JDK is now printed on the image, and you can't build the same image again. It feels like we've lost something.
Yeah, but I mean, like you could go and argue an argument in the other direction, like that knowing the tool, like if it turns out there's a CVE in Gradle, right? Don't you actually want to know whether or not you built this thing with the CVE? Not necessarily that the CV made it all, CVE made it the whole way down, but just like you were using this particular thing. Like it seems very weird to me that like a build tool would change without changing the overall output, like something you'd have put in the bill of materials in the first place.
Like a
think
patch version that fixes a bug in the build tool, but it's not a bug in the feature you're using, you know?
I think there are situations where it matters, like compilers and things close to the app, and situations where it doesn't matter. What if we just have a flag that lets you say, yes, build time dependencies
build
go in the
bomb.
image? No, they don't. And then you can choose your own adventure.
I'm glad that we've separated them into two places. I feel really good about that. The question is just whether we should stick it in a label or not.
I'm even okay if that flag is not the default. Sorry, go ahead.
The only thing is that let's say you're compiling some binary either using C++ or Go, and you're using some like libraries during build time, which never end up in the final image. Where would you put that bomb? Would that go in the launch bomb or the build bomb? And if it goes in the build bomb, then I know that's going to affect my final binary, even though there's no real way to inspect.
Yeah, but won't it have affected your final binary, right? Like you immediately are going to invalidate any reproducibility because the overall thing is. But there is, I guess, an argument that there's no way to trace back why exactly that happened then.
So yeah, my argument was for putting the build like bomb in a label or something that you can inspect, because I guess the current way of doing this is just putting it in the launch terminal, even though it was not technically in the launch, like you're not including those libraries or those header files in your final image. But if you want to inspect it quickly, you still have to put it in the launch terminal.
I think we can do that. My request would be that it should be optional. There should be a like flag to pack and lifecycle that says, yes, put the build time label on, or no, don't put the build time label on. And, if we want one giant, bill of materials at the end that has everything together, then it could.
Two giant bills of materials. I don't want them to go together.
I mean, I'm just saying we can provide ways of doing all those different things, right? Separate bill of materials, one combined bill of materials, just the runtime ones, right? I think we have that ability to configure it. Sorry.
I guess that would also be a different RFC, right? Like, because that's changing the behavior of where the bill of materials goes. So
yes.
Yeah, I didn't think it had to go in this RFC, but I was wondering if while we're making changes to the bomb, we wanted to get a couple going together at the same time. But I guess they're in different APIs, so.
I think the only discussion point I had was like something Natalie and I were discussing, which is whether the bomb should be cleared. So whether the life cycle of the bomb and the layer should be the same, or whether the life cycle of the bomb and the metadata file should be the same. For me, it made more sense to couple it with the life cycle of the layer. So if you're reusing the layer, the bomb should go with that. But since we're putting the bomb in the metadata file, it means that we have additional logic to like handle clearing things out when they shouldn't be there. Does that make sense?
I feel like the metadata file is kind of an implementation detail here because it doesn't persist between builds. I feel like if the exporter, if the analyzer was restoring the bomb and the exporter was reading it directly out of layer metadata versus what happens now where the builder in an intermediate step grabs it all and writes it into metadata toml at the end of the day, that behaves the same. Unless I'm misunderstanding.
So I think if you open the pull request, the last discussion that's currently unresolved. So the discussion is whether like the bomb should be cleared alongside the layer, or whether it should have this if you restore it and then you clear it, although it's an implementation detail, the users are still like, they have that picture in their mind that, okay, this is one single file that gets restored. So now if you're restoring it partially versus completely, it might be confusing for them.
Why would we ever restore the layer tunnel with its normal metadata, but without its bill of materials metadata? That sounds weird. I don't understand the motivation for doing that. Sorry.
The motivation for that was to couple the bill of materials with the life cycle of the layer. So if you're ever not, so there may be cases when you're not restoring the layer, but you're restoring the layer content metadata. In which case, do you want the bill of materials to stay there, or should it just stick with when the layer is being restored, so that it has the same, like it's coupled closely to the layer rather than the metadata?
You're thinking of, sorry, go ahead.
I say the only case where like we would restore the layer content metadata, but not the layer itself, is for a layer that's launch true, build false, and cache false. And we do that so that someone can reuse the layer. And in that case, I feel like that's the case where we definitely want it, because someone opting in to reuse it might not have regenerated the bomb, but the contents of the layer are exactly the same as they were last time, and we should propagate that along.
It is weird that you can change the metadata on a layer that gets preserved that never gets downloaded and update that metadata. That's allowed right now.
That's what was confusing for me, that someone could modify that, whereas the layer would remain the same. Or yeah, sorry.
It might be like changing the format or something, though. I feel like that, like so much of this is already on our system on the build pack that doesn't frighten me too much.
Yeah, I would say if we want a separate RFC that says that file's not allowed to change in that case, then we should make that a separate RFC, if that makes sense. But for now, have it follow the life cycle of the metadata next to it. If that makes sense.
Okay, I will amend that then.
All right.
Gotta run to my next thing.
Yeah, I think we're way over time. Thanks, everybody.